Last month, I moved to a new town to be closer to my daughter and her husband. I was 52 and recently retired from construction. I thought it would be great to help them with the renovations on their new house. The neighborhood looked nice, with neat houses and freshly painted walls. It felt hopeful. The first night I was tired but excited. I made a sandwich and settled on the couch. It was quiet until I noticed a flickering light coming from the basement. I thought maybe it was just old wiring. I decided to check it out. As I opened the door, the stairs creaked under my feet. A chill crawled up my spine. I flipped the switch, and the light flickered, hesitating before coming on. That's when I spotted an old toolbox in the corner. I approached it. When I opened it, I found a few personal items. None of them belonged to my daughter or her husband. I pushed down the rising unease. Maybe I was just imagining things. As the days went by, I found more odd things hidden around the house. One afternoon I stumbled upon an old photograph tucked behind a floorboard. It was a picture of a man, a woman, and a child. Faces I didn't recognize. I thought about asking my daughter if she knew them, but hesitated. I didn't know how to bring it up. My son-in-law started to notice, too. He rifled through some of the items, his face twisting in confusion and concern. He asked sharp questions that made me want to back away. I wanted to explain that it wouldn't matter, but I didn't have the words. Maybe I was just stressed about the renovations. One night, while I sat finishing my sandwich, I heard a scraping from the basement. My heart raced. I thought it was just a rat, but the sound felt too deliberate. I stood up, nervous, and walked towards the door. I opened it slowly, and there it was again, a soft scraping. My son-in-law called out, his voice tight. "What's going on?" "Just checking," I said, though I wasn't sure what I was checking for. As I stepped onto the creaky staircase, I felt the cold air wrap around me. Something felt wrong. The hairs on my arms stood up. At the bottom of the stairs, the light flickered worse than before. I strained to see. Suddenly a shadow darted behind the toolbox. My heart dropped. It could just be my imagination, but I couldn't shake off the feeling. I took a shaky breath and turned back. "Mark," my son-in-law called with a note of concern. "Yeah?" I replied, but the room felt empty. Everything around me was silent. I remembered the odd items I found. I asked myself what was going on in this house. I started to question if it was safe. Maybe things weren't as simple as they seemed. What else could be hiding in the shadows of their new home? The next morning I tried to shake off the fear that clung to me. I needed to focus on helping my daughter and her husband. I made a plan to paint the living room. As I mixed the paint, I kept glancing at the basement door, half expecting something to emerge. I told myself it was just my imagination. After a couple of hours, my son-in-law, Jake, came in to help. He glanced at me, then at the door. "Have you been down there again?" His tone was serious. I hesitated. "Not since last night." He frowned. "I think we should take a look." "No, maybe it's nothing," I said, trying to brush it off. "Mark, we need to understand what's going on. I don't like the idea of some stranger stuff being in our house." He crossed his arms, waiting for my response. I sighed. "Fine, let's check it out together." With a flashlight in one hand and a steadying breath, I followed him down the stairs. The light flickered again, casting eerie shadows on the walls. I took one step and froze. The toolbox loomed in front of us, the scene feeling too familiar. "Open it," Jake nudged, his voice low. "Why me?" I protested. But I could see he was serious. So I knelt beside the toolbox, heart racing. I pulled it open and jumped. Inside was a diary, yellowed and tattered. The sight sent a chill down my spine. "What's that?" Jake asked, leaning closer. I hesitated, my fingers brushing the cover. "I don't know." We exchanged worried glances. I flipped it open to a random page. The handwriting seemed shaky. "Dear Mary," it started. There were names I didn't recognize. I skimmed through lines about family struggles, strange happenings, and an overwhelming sense of loss. I handed it to Jake, who read silently, growing more troubled with each line. Do you think it belonged to the previous owners?" he asked, glancing at me. "Could be." There was silence, the only sound the flickering overhead light. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were intruding on something private, something we shouldn't have unearthed. Just then, a loud bang echoed from behind us. We whipped around. Heart racing, I felt the air turn thick. "What was that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Jake replied, his eyes darting around the basement. Before I could suggest we leave, Jake spotted something in the corner. "Look!" he pointed. A small dusty box sat partially hidden beneath an old tarp. My instinct screamed at me to ignore it, to get out. But curiosity pulled me closer. I glanced at Jake. "What do you think is in there?" "We have to find out," he said, his expression resolute. As I stepped toward it, the basement light flickered once more before going out entirely. My heart sank as darkness enveloped us. "Jake?" I called, panic rising in my chest. "Are you still there?" Nothing. Just oppressive silence. A thick dread settled in the air. That's when I heard a whisper, barely audible but clear enough to send shivers down my spine. "Get out." I turned, my breath quickening. Something was waiting in the darkness, and I was terrified of what it might be. I stood frozen in place, my heart pounding in my ears. The whisper hung in the air, echoing my worst fears. I could barely make out the outline of the walls, the shapes around me turning into menacing shadows. I called for Jake again, feeling more desperate. "Jake!" There was still no response. I felt panic creeping in. My fingers brushed the cold texture of the wall, guiding me back toward where we entered. But the darkness swallowed every inch of my surroundings, and I felt completely lost. Then, a sudden flicker of light. I squinted, praying it wasn't my mind playing tricks. It illuminated a small corner. And that's when I saw it. A face peering at me from the darkness, pale and hollow-eyed. My breath caught in my throat, and I stumbled backward. "Jake!" I shouted, my voice loud but shaky. The light flickered again, and the face disappeared moments before Jake's flashlight suddenly flicked back on. "There you are," he exclaimed, relief flooding his features as he rushed to my side. "What happened? I thought I lost you." I saw something over there," I stammered, pointing. "In the dark." Jake's flashlight beam swept over the corner, but all that met us were the old wooden beams and forgotten boxes. "There's nothing here, Mark. I swear, Jake, I saw a face. It was watching us." He frowned, uncertainty twisting his expression. "You might have imagined it. Let's just check that box and get out of here." Despite my unease, I nodded. The fear was working its way through my veins, but I couldn't back down now. Jake approached the dusty box and lifted the top. The moment he opened it, a guttural noise escaped. "What is it?" I whispered, my curiosity piqued despite my dread. Inside the box lay a tangle of old photographs and various items, each coated in a thick layer of dust. As he flipped through the photos, I leaned in closer. They were faded images of a family from years ago, faces I didn't recognize. Then, Jake paused. "Look at this." He held up one photo that showed a woman standing in front of a different house. My stomach knotted. "Why does she look so familiar?" I muttered, squinting at the picture. "Maybe she's a past owner?" Jake suggested. But then something else caught my eye. Among the photos, a piece of folded paper lay hidden. I reached out and grabbed it. Unfolding it cautiously, I found a note scrawled in the same shaky handwriting as the diary. "Mark, you need to read this," I said, urgency creeping into my voice. Jake's brow furrowed as he leaned closer. The note read, "If you find this, it's too late. The house remembers. It takes what it desires." The hair on the back of my neck stood up. "What does that mean?" I asked, fear bubbling in my chest. Before Jake could answer, the overhead light buzzed and flickered back to life, illuminating the basement once more. But this time, there was a shift in the atmosphere. An icy breeze swept through, and I felt a sense of foreboding settle in. "Mark?" Jake's voice trailed off as he stared at something behind me. I turned slowly, dread pooling in my core. There, at the top of the stairs, stood a shadowy figure, its eyes glinting in the harsh light. "Get out!" It hissed, and my blood turned to ice. I grabbed Jake's arm, and we bolted for the stairs, heart racing. Whatever was watching us wanted no witnesses. We stumbled up the stairs, the old wood creaking under our hastened feet. A frantic blend of fear and adrenaline surged within me, pushing me forward. Jake was right beside me, his flashlight flickering wildly as he turned back toward the basement, searching for the figure we'd just seen. "Don't look!" I shouted, not wanting him to meet whatever that was again. We burst through the door at the top of the stairs and slammed it shut, our heavy breaths echoing in the sudden silence. "Did you see it?" Jake gasped, leaning against the door as if it could somehow prevent the thing from following us. "Yeah," I panted, trying to gather my thoughts. "What was it?" "I don't know," he replied, his voice shaky. "But it didn't look human." We stood in the dim hallway, shadows creeping along the walls. The air felt charged, thick with an unseen presence. My skin tingled with awareness, as if the house itself was watching us. "I can't believe we just—" I started, but before I could finish, a loud bang echoed from the basement door. My eyes widened and my heart sank. "Maybe it's just the wind?" Jake suggested, though his voice lacked conviction. "It's not the wind, Jake," I snapped. "We need to get out of here, now." I grabbed his arm, leading him to the front door. My instinct screamed at me to move, to get as far from this unsettling place as possible. As we reached for the doorknob, the temperature plummeted, and I could see our breath condensing in the air. "Wait," Jake said. "What if it's gone? Maybe we can go back down and—" "No." I cut him off. "You heard it. It's not gone. It wants us here." I twisted the doorknob, but it didn't budge. My breath quickened. "Try pulling instead," Jake suggested. I grabbed the knob again, pulling with all my strength. It remained stubbornly locked. Panic began creeping back in. "What is happening? Why won't it open?" "Mark, look!" Jake pointed behind me. I turned to see the hallway shift, the shadows thickening in a way that felt tangible. The walls seemed to close in, and a low humming filled the air, a sound that thrummed deep within my chest. I knew that wasn't just echoes. "Let's go back down. We can find another way out," Jake urged, but I shook my head. "No, we can't go back down there." My heart raced as I realized the basement was no longer our only worry. As I spun back to the door, a figure loomed in the hallway's dim light. It was the same shadowy figure from before, its eyes burning, locking onto me with intent. "Leave!" It hissed again, the words curling like a viper's tongue around my spine. I turned and looked at Jake, pure desperation filling my gaze. We have to do something. The shadows elongated around us, and the walls felt like they were edging closer, tightening their grip. But as fear washed over me, a sudden thought ignited within. If the house wanted something from us, maybe it meant to tell us something instead. "Jake, the diary!" I blurted out. "We need to find out more about this place." Jake hesitated, eyeing the shadows thrumming with dark purpose. "Are you sure?" "I don't think we have a choice." Just as I said that, the figure surged forward. "Go! Now!" I screamed. We ran down the hallway, following the pull of curiosity and dread. Behind us, the entity followed, relentless. We had to uncover the truth. There was something we needed to learn before it was too late. We dashed down the hallway, our footsteps muffled by the thickening shadows that stretched to swallow us whole. The air around me felt electric, the unsettling hum growing louder with each heartbeat. I glanced at Jake, his face a mix of fear and determination. "Where's the diary?" I shouted over my shoulder, hoping the answer would somehow lead us to safety. "It should be in the library," Jake replied, his voice barely cutting through the oppressive atmosphere. We veered left, gripping the walls for balance as the shadows seemed to writhe and coil. Reaching the library door, I slammed it open with a determined shove and stepped inside. The room was dim, books lining every wall, their spines cracked and dusty as if untouched for years. My eyes darted around, scanning for the leather-bound diary we had found on our previous visit. "Over there!" Jake pointed to the far side of the room, where a small desk sat hidden behind stacks of old books. I sprinted over, heart pounding in my chest, with the echo of the figure's whispers echoing behind us like an unholy choir. As I rifled through the papers, something caught my eye. A letter addressed to the house's previous owner, written in a hurried scrawl. I grabbed it and quickly read the first line. "The darkness is not what it seems." My stomach sank. What did that even mean? "Did you find it?" Jake's voice trembled as he glanced nervously back at the door. "Not the diary, but I found this letter." I held it up, my hands shaking. Just then the door slammed shut with a deafening thud. Rattled, I jumped, and the letter slipped from my grasp, swirling to the floor. The shadows in the room grew thicker, crawling along the walls and wrapping around us. "We're trapped!" Jake cried, panic rising in his voice. "No!" I yelled, trying to suppress my own rising fear. "We have to break the hold it has on us." I grabbed the letter again, reading it aloud. "The darkness is not what it seems. It seeks the truth." "What truth?" Jake asked desperately, casting another fearful look at the door. "I don't know, but maybe it's connected to the diary. We have to keep searching." I dashed to the shelves, my fingers trembling as I combed through the dust-covered tomes, looking for anything that might provide context. Jake pushed against the door, trying to pry it open, but it wouldn't budge. While I rummaged, something caught my peripheral vision. A shadowy figure slid past the windows, dark and fluid. My heart raced. "Jake, did you see that?" "I didn't see anything, just the door," he shouted back. I turned my focus back to the shelves, fear heightening my urgency. Then, at the end of the room, I spotted a glimmer, a small, ornate box half buried under the debris. "That could be it!" I shouted, darting toward it. As I reached for the box, icy fingers wrapped around my wrist. I screamed, yanking my arm free. The figure had come closer, now taking shape in front of me. Its eyes bore into mine, a mix of warning and malevolence. "Leave before it's too late." It hissed again. Its voice slithered through the air, wrapping around my thoughts like creeping vines. But I couldn't leave without knowing. My instinct shouted that whatever lay within that box held the key. With renewed determination, I opened the box, praying it would reveal the secrets hidden in this cursed house. Just as I did, the lights flickered, plunging us into total darkness. "Mark!" Jake called out, his voice laced with dread. Suddenly the air buzzed like a live wire, and I felt something shift around us. Then I remembered that letter. The darkness was becoming our ally, or our enemy. And now it was ready to show its true face. The darkness closed in, swallowing the library whole. I fumbled with the box in my hands, heart pounding as I strained to hear anything over the pounding of my own pulse. A cold breeze swept through the room, sending a shiver down my spine. I could barely see Jake now, his outline just a shadow by the door. "Mark, we need to get out," he shouted, desperation thick in his voice. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to push through the panic. "Jake, wait! What if there's something in here that can help us?" My voice trembled, but I wasn't ready to let go of hope. I turned back to the box, my fingers brushing over its intricate surface. With a quick flick, I opened it, the hinges creaking in the unnerving silence. Inside, I found a collection of faded photographs and a small yellow journal. "Look," I called to Jake. "Maybe this will explain something." I pulled out the journal, its pages worn, but surprisingly intact. As I flipped through them, details of past events sprang to life. Whispers of the house's history, strange rituals, and lost souls. "Only the truth can tame the shadows," I read aloud, my voice quaking. "What does that mean?" "Mark, we don't have time for this!" Jake shouted, banging against the door. But before I could respond, I felt an icy chill wash over me, raking fingers of fear along my spine. The shadowy figure reappeared, looming closer, its form growing more defined, eyes glowing like embers in the blackness. "Seek the truth," it growled, its voice rough as gravel, "or be consumed by the darkness." I stumbled back, nearly losing my footing. Jake's panic was palpable, echoing my own fears. "What does it want?" he asked, his face a mask of terror. "It wants us to act," I said, forcing myself to hold my ground. I glanced at the journal again. This could be our way out. I launched into the pages, searching for anything that could reveal what the darkness feared. Strange symbols and cryptic notes flooded my view, each more bizarre than the last. My thumb brushed over a crudely drawn figure, a dark entity with chains, locked away, but the detail of its face sent a chill through me. I couldn't help but think it looked a lot like the figure we'd seen earlier. "Mark, hurry!" Jake cried, and I could hear the wood splintering against his desperate attempts to force the door. I flipped to the last page. There it was, scrawled in frantic writing. "The heart of the house holds the secret. Its beating will lead the lost." "The heart of the house," I whispered, the words igniting something in me. "Jake, what if we need to find the heart?" "But where is it?" he yelled back, the shadows stretching their dark fingers towards him. "Maybe under the floor?" I suggested, my mind racing. "Yes, but do you think we can make it?" The figure loomed closer, its form now indistinct and swirling with shadows. I felt an urgent pull toward the center of the room, the tug of instinct guiding me. "We have to try." We moved as one, stumbling away from the door and toward the desk. My heart raced with fear and adrenaline as I dropped to my hands and knees, fingers brushing against the cold wooden planks. Suddenly, the lights flickered back on, illuminating the library in a ghostly glow. I gasped. There it was, a faint pulse emanating from beneath the floor. Then the air shifted, and I realized the figure had vanquished, leaving behind only the echo of its warning. "Do you feel that?" I asked, breathless. "It's beneath us." That might be our way out, Jake exclaimed, hope creeping into his voice. I nodded, adrenaline surging. We had to uncover the heart and face whatever lay beneath the surface. I knew one thing for certain. We were running out of time. I pressed my ear to the floor, trying to listen for that pulse beneath us, while Jake paced nervously behind me. It was steady, almost rhythmic, but it came with an unsettling resonance that made my stomach churn. We need something to pry these boards up, I muttered, glancing around the room. There was a heavy wooden chair against the wall, its legs thick and sturdy. I'll get it! Jake shouted and dashed to the chair, dragging it toward me. The sound of wood scraping against wood echoed in the stillness, but my focus stayed on the floor. I could almost hear the heart of the house calling to me, urging me to take action. Now what? Jake asked as he handed me one of the chair legs. I shrugged. Just start prying up the floorboards. We need to find out what's down there. With Jake crouched beside me, we thrust the makeshift tool under the nearest board. It creaked loudly, small splinters flying into the air as we strained with all our might. Each sound fed the sinking dread in my gut. I half expected the shadow to reappear, casting its dark shroud over us once more. Then with one last heave, the board popped loose, revealing a dark cavity. A damp smell wafted up, catching in my throat. I peered inside and gasped. Jake, look! Within the cavity lay a small stone, smooth and dark, pulsating softly with dim light. It seemed to absorb the shadows around it, creating an unsettling contrast. I can't believe this, Jake breathed, eyes wide. Is that the heart? I reached in, hesitating for a moment as I felt a strange warmth radiating from the stone. I think it is. But what do we do with it? Suddenly the air grew thicker, like we were being watched. A chilling wave washed over me. I pulled my hand back just in time as a shadow spilled forth from the corner of the room. The figure materialized, now towering over us, fury etched into its features. You dare disturb what lies below? It thundered, voice echoing like rolling thunder. You are entwined in a destiny you do not understand. Jake stumbled backward, fear etched on his face. I stood frozen, a mix of fear and resolve washing over me. We need to understand, I shouted back, surprising even myself with the strength of my voice. We're not here to harm you. The figure paused, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw confusion flicker across its shadowy visage. The truth must be known, it hissed. But the heart is not yours to take. Before I could respond, the room began to shake, and the walls seemed to shudder. Dust fell from above, and I felt the ground shift beneath me. Jake! I yelled, grabbing his arm. We have to hold on. The figure stepped closer, the shadows swirling around it like a storm. Choose wisely, for a decision must be made, it warned. That's when I saw the floor begin to crack, a fissure forming through which more darkness seeped. My breath quickened as I realized we were running out of time to uncover the truth. I glanced at the heart, and then at Jake. Do we take it, or do we leave it? I asked, anxiety creeping back in. But just as Jake opened his mouth to respond, the heart flickered violently. For an instant, it illuminated the room, revealing symbols on the walls that mirrored those I'd seen in the journal. What was the connection? My mind raced with questions. I looked back at the shadow, feeling the weight of my choice place itself heavily on my shoulders. I didn't have long to decide. The figure lunged forward. In a split second, everything changed. The shadow lunged, and fear ignited in the pit of my stomach. My instinct kicked in. I grabbed the heart from the cavity, feeling its warmth surge through my fingers. Jake, run! I shouted, pulling him back as I stumbled away from the figure's grasp. We raced for the door, but the shaky ground seemed to conspire against us. The shadow's voice crashed against the walls, sound waves reverberating with fury. "You will regret this decision," it roared. I could hear Jake's heavy breathing beside me. "It's going to collapse!" he gasped, casting a glance back at the dark figure whose form twisted and tangled like smoke. "We have to go." I didn't know where we would go, but we had to get out. I pushed the door open and we barreled into the hallway. The heart still clutched tightly in my hand. The air felt electric, tinged with danger. Shadows danced along the walls, and I could hear the house groan, as if it were waking from a deep slumber. "We can't just run!" Jake shouted, his voice sharp with panic. "What do we do with it?" He gestured to the heart, now glowing faintly in my palm. "I don't know. Maybe we can find out what those symbols meant," I replied, glancing over my shoulder. The figure moved, but this time it stayed behind, shadowed by the doorway. "That is your only chance," the figure bellowed, darkness pooling in its wake. "But you must return it." I turned my focus back to the hallway, pressing forward. The symbols were now burned into my memory, each line and curve seeming to pulse with life, as if they held answers to questions I didn't even know I had. Are they a warning? I wondered aloud, recalling the journal's entries. Or do they tell us how to control whatever this is? Jake shook his head. "We can't waste time thinking. We need to get out of this house first." Suddenly a creaking sound echoed, growing louder with each step. Then, without warning, a section of the ceiling collapsed down, sending dust and plaster flying. We barely ducked out of the way, gasping as debris rained around us. "See what I mean?" Jake yelled. "This place is coming apart. We need to decide what we're gonna do with that thing." I clutched the heart tighter, its warmth seeming to pulse against my palm. "It might be the key to stopping whatever the shadow wants," I suggested, feeling a flicker of hope. "But how do we use it?" The weight of our situation pressed down on me, the looming threat of the figure still not far behind us. Just then, one of the symbols on the walls flickered in my mind, an outline that seemed to guide me. "Jake, I think we need to find a way to activate it," I shouted, urgency propelling my actions. I hesitated only briefly before moving back down the hallway. "What are you doing?" Jake cried. "Are you crazy?" But just as I turned to rally his courage, I saw a glint of silver amidst the shadows. It was a door handle, slightly ajar, the promise of escape flickering like the heart in my hand. "Jake, over here!" I called, making my way toward it as the shadows behind us deepened. In that moment, I realized this door might be tied to the heart, that it could lead us to the answers we needed. All I could do was pray it wouldn't lead to our doom. I turned the doorknob slowly, the metal cold against my palm. It felt like an eternity as the door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room. The air inside was stale, almost suffocating, but something about it called to me. I stepped in, dragging Jake with me as I whispered, "Come on, we need to see what's in here." The room was cluttered with odd trinkets and furniture draped in dusty sheets. To my left, I spotted a large bookcase, its shelves lined with dusty tomes, their spines cracked and weathered. I moved toward it, my heart pounding, as curiosity mixed with fear. If these symbols mean something, maybe something here can help us. Jake hung back, glancing nervously at the door. "I don't like this. We shouldn't be here. What if that thing follows us?" "We need more information," I insisted. I can't just give the heart back without knowing if it will help us. My voice shook, but I had to believe we could figure this out. I reached out and pulled a book from the shelf. Its cover was worn, but had a strange symbol etched into it, one that matched the glowing lines of the heart. "Jake, look at this." I turned the book so he could see it. It has the same markings. He peered over my shoulder, his eyes widening. What does it say? I opened it slowly, revealing pages filled with strange illustrations and incantations. It looks like notes on whatever that shadow is. Maybe it talks about the heart, too. I scanned the pages, my pulse racing. Then I saw it. A phrase that made my stomach drop. It says the heart can only be returned when the shadows of the past are faced. The implications twisted in my mind. Before I could process this further, a crash echoed from the hallway, and I felt a rush of panic. Jake, we need to move, now! Suddenly the room grew colder, and shadows seeped in from under the door. I grabbed a small weighty book, shoving it into my pack, as Jake yanked me toward the door. What do we do? He asked, breathing heavily. We find a way to face whatever the shadow wants. We need to figure out its connection to the heart, I replied, stepping back out into the hallway. The walls shook around us, dust flakes dancing in the dim light, and the pulse of the heart intensified. But then as I turned, I felt something brush against my shoulder. A quick, icy touch. I whipped around, my eyes darting back to the shadow lurking in the doorway. It's coming! Jake screamed, pushing me forward. We need to leave now. But just as we sprinted down the hall, I heard another voice echo in the shadows, one that sent chills down my spine. You cannot escape your past. I glanced back. The figure's face was partially visible through the darkness, its eyes shimmering with a familiar sorrow. It whispered again. You must confront what you have hidden. My heart dropped. I realized this wasn't just about the heart or the house. It was about everything I had buried, everything I'd run from. As I turned to Jake, my hands trembling around the heart, I knew we were running out of time. What did the figure mean? What past needed facing? And then, before I could find the answers, the hallway split in two. A path ahead of us, and a door on the right, where shadows seemed to gather more thickly. I hesitated, my mind racing. That's when I saw it. A flicker of light beyond the door, drawing me in like a moth to a flame. The flicker was mesmerizing, a beacon amidst the chaos. I glanced at Jake, whose fear mirrored my own, yet there was an urgency in us both. What if it's a trap? He whispered, his voice strained, but I could feel the pull of the light drawing me closer. I have to know, I replied, my heart racing in rhythm with the pulsating warmth of the heart in my palm. The shadow was behind us, its haunting whispers echoing in our minds, urging us to confront whatever it sought. Then let's do it together, Jake said, determination shining in his eyes. We exchanged a tense nod before moving toward the door, pushing it open slowly. Inside was a room bathed in soft, ethereal light. The air felt vibrant, almost alive, yet tinged with sadness. Memories floated through the space, flickering images of laughter and glimpses of families long gone danced in the luminescence. I took a step inside, feeling a pull, an urgency to connect with whatever lay within this chamber. But as we inhaled the essence of what was once joy, an uneasy sensation gripped me. Jake, I murmured, my eyes catching a reflection in the light's flicker. Figures moved within it, trapped like shadows yearning for release. This feels unnatural, Jake finished, the tension in his voice palpable. We shouldn't linger. The shadow is close. Despite our instincts urging us to flee, I inched forward. It's speaking to me, Jake. It's like it needs something from us. The heart throbbed in my hand, resonating with the emotions swirling in the room. Suddenly the light flickered violently, and cracks ran along the walls. Panic surged in my veins. We need to figure out how to confront this, I urged, glancing down at the heart. Memories flickered through my mind, each one closer to realizations I had long buried. It wants the truth. The shadows coiled tightly around us, pulling at the edges of our reality. A voice echoed, deep and thundering. You cannot run from your past. Mark! Jake shouted, pointing toward the heart, where the shadows began to swirl faster, forming into a grotesque figure that beckoned us. It wants you to face something. I struggled to break free of the train of thoughts that threatened to drown me. You need to hold on to the heart, Jake. I think I can talk to it. What? He looked incredulous. Mark, we don't know what that shadow wants. It wants answers, I insisted, feeling a sudden clarity. And I think I have to confront my own ghosts. Before I could give Jake time to argue, I stepped closer, heart racing. As I held the heart aloft, the pulsating light seemed to illuminate the shadows clinging to the walls. I felt everything I'd avoided wash over me. The grief, the regret, the isolation. I could see the faces of those I'd lost. My wife, my friends, my own past decisions mocking me. Come out! I shouted, voice trembling yet resolute. I'm ready to face you. The figure coalesced, its form shifting between familiar faces. Friends, family, each twisted by the burden of unresolved emotions. You abandoned us, Mark, the figure cried, anguish etched in its features. You've hidden from your past for too long. I know, I responded, sinking into the weight of those haunting memories. But I'm here now. I'm not running anymore. The heart in my hand pulsed fiercely, casting light that penetrated the shadows. I could feel its warmth merging with the sorrow spiraling around us, each pulse asking for acknowledgement and understanding. I didn't mean to leave you behind. I thought it would make things easier. With every word, the figures seemed to waver, flickers of their shadows fighting the embrace of brightness. Face the truth, they whispered, voices layering together like a haunting choir. You must understand why you ran. I looked at Jake, who stood at the threshold, his expression a mix of determination and fear. You're not alone, Mark, he shouted, reaching out towards me. Face it together. Together? I echoed. And with that affirmation, I stepped deeper into the light, clenching the heart as memories surged around me like a storm, forcing me to confront what I had buried within. The shadows spiraled wildly, threatening to engulf, but the heart emitted a powerful glow, illuminating each ghostly face surrounding me. Lost, but longing for resolution. You will not take him. Jake's voice rang out, a protective presence beside me. Remember us! They cried, the shadows edging ever closer. Feel the pain and release us. I closed my eyes, surrendering to the emotions flooding through me. I relived every loss, every regret, my hands shaking around the heart as it responded to my pain, pulsing in rhythm with my heart. And in that moment, something shifted within the darkness, tension snapping like a taut wire. As soon as I embraced my truth, the heart radiated a brilliant light, illuminating the darkness, washing away the shadows wrapped around my memories. I felt them lift, the past finally breathing into the light as faces of loved ones softened, smiles breaking through the gloom. One last looming shadow tried to hold its ground, but it faltered, dissipating into wisps of smoke. You are free, Mark, it whispered, wings of darkness unfurling before fading back into the ether. Breathless, I opened my eyes, standing in an empty room. The heart lay dormant in my palm, no longer pulsating but warm and still, as if holding the weight of everything we'd just faced. Did we? Jake began, but I cut him off. I think we did, I said softly, tears prickling my eyes. But as we stood there, The sensations of the house began to whisper again, echoing through the now quiet space. I looked around, feeling the void left behind by the shadows. But there remained an unease, an inkling that not all answers were revealed. "I guess some questions will remain unanswered," I said quietly to Jake, who nodded in contemplation. We took a step back, ready to emerge from the depths we had journeyed through. But the worry lingered beneath the surface. Had we truly freed the souls, or merely shifted the shadows? I knew as we turned to leave that while I had faced my past, the scars remained. Etched into the foundation of this house and my heart, I looked back once more, half expecting a figure to linger behind. But all that remained was stillness, and as we stepped out into the world, the light of day warmed my skin. I felt a heaviness lift, yet a whisper lingered in the air, a reminder that some truths are best left to simmer in the shadows, forever elusive, while others might guide us through the darkest of times.